So this video is just all about why I think the Golf mk6 GTI is probably one of the most underrated Golf GTIs of them all, and why I think you should consider buying one. Hi and welcome back to Joe Talks Cars. I really wanted to start this video outside, but as the wind is just absolutely horrific today, I thought I'd better just sit in the car. So apologies if it's a little bit boring. I'll try and change up the camera angles to make it a little bit more interesting, but the wind is just too much to bear out there. So this is my Golf GTI mk6. It's a 2010 plate car and I've had it around 3 years. In all my other videos where I've featured my Porsche Cayman, a lot of people have said, can you do some videos on your Golf? Can you show us the Golf? I was really pleased that people were commenting saying, please show us the Golf, so I thought I better just bring it out and do a quick video. So this isn't the best example of a mk6 GTI you'll find. It's a little bit battered around the edges. I use it as my daily driver. We put the dog in it. You know, it's just used for everything. It's an everyday car, but it's a little bit quirky and interesting, so I thought it's perfect for the channel. So a bit of history on the Golf GTI. You'll probably already be aware the Golf GTI launched in 1970 with the Mark 1. Greatly received, fantastic car. They're still very, very sought after today. It went through a number of different versions, and during the late 90s it sort of lost its way a bit, became a bit fat and slow, and even had wood on the dashboard. It was pretty terrible, if I'm honest. And then thankfully the honour was restored to the Golf GTI with the Mark 5. So you'll have seen videos on that online, journalists going crazy about them. Brilliant car. It was just back to what you'd expect from a Golf GTI. The mk6 then came out in 2009, so this is a very early car. A lot of people just said it's just a facelift of the Mark 5. I don't think that's fair really, because if you actually look at it, they don't really look anything alike. Everything's been changed on it. The facelift between the Mark 7 and the 7.5 obviously was a facelift. A lot of people wouldn't even be able to tell the difference, but this one, I think it looks a lot better. The Mark 5, I liked it when it came out, but I feel like they've aged quite badly. So I think the mk6, in my opinion, is a really, really good looking car. These cars can be quite expensive. When I bought this about 3 years ago, we paid, or maybe it was about 4 years ago, we paid about 11,000 for the car. And I hadn't really looked into many of them. I found that quite expensive, but when I started looking around, they just seemed to hold the value well, which is typical at VW. But the GTI in particular just held it. You look at a mk6 of this year, a non-GTI, so like a TDI or just a really basic one, and they're a couple of grand. Whereas these, for a high mileage, you're going to be looking at about 8,000, and for one more like this, about 9 or 10. So they are really expensive when you consider how old they are. When you compare this to the Mark 5, obviously you can pick up Mark 5s are a lot cheaper. A high mileage Mark 5, you'll be looking at about £4,000, all the way up to about 8 for a really good one. Comparing that to a Mark 7, the minimum price I've seen a Mark 7 go for with sort of high mileage is about 12,000. They go up to around 15,000 for a Mark 7, a little bit more for a 7.5. So when you actually consider the value, I think it's just amazing when there's not a lot between it. This car is a really, really basic spec, as you'll see from the video. It's got 17-inch alloys. It's got tinted windows. It's got the full leather seats, which are really, really nice. It's a manual, and it's got the LED tail lights. All of those things, I think, make it look really nice, but it is a very low spec mod. So you can get adaptive suspension and you can get active exhaust, but this car has none of that. It's just super, super basic. It hasn't even got cruise control. Right, so why did I buy this car? And why do I think it's basically the pick of the Golf GTI? Well, a lot of that is just down to cost. Of course, the new Golf GTI is an unbelievable car. I'm yet to drive one, but I really, really want to at some point. And I've driven a few Mark 7s and they're just phenomenal cars. For me, the mk6 is the last of the truly analog Golf GTIs. This car is super basic, and that's what I love about it. It hasn't got big wheels. The ride comfort is just exceptional. It's not got adaptive suspension. It's not got an active exhaust. It's just super basic, and it hasn't got loads and loads of power. Now, you find with a lot of these hot hatches and a lot of powerful cars in general is that you can't really exploit the power on the road. They're far too powerful, and when it's wet, you're just all over the place. With this, I feel like you can drive it flat out. You can get in it and floor it. 207 horsepower these days is absolutely nothing. you don't even need to have a hot hatch to get that kind of power from a car. So it just means you can drive it really hard and really get the most out of the car. Where cars become really enjoyable for me is on the limit, and this car's really easy to reach the limit. You may see that as a bad thing, but I think that's the limit is where things start to become fun. The wheels aren't too wide, they're quite narrow, there's plenty of grip. Don't get me wrong, the car grips, it holds the road beautifully, but it's more like an old-fashioned sort of hot hatch, just get in it and rag it type of hot hatch, and I love that about it. So one thing that I do really enjoy about this car is just how compliant it is and how usable it is. The ride quality, compared with my other car, which, as you'll have seen in other videos, is a Porsche Cayman 987. Beautiful car, but when you go on roads like this, you really realise how rock hard it is and how great and comfortable this one is. These seats are they hold you so well. They're just beautiful. I really did actually want the tartan seats, and I'd recommend that if you haven't got dogs and you are going to look after your car and not batter it like I have, I'd recommend you go for them. But if you've got children and you've got dogs, and you need the leathers. The other reason why I would prefer a GTI, just any GTI, not necessarily just the mk6, but prefer a GTI over something such as a Golf R, is just, I'm sorry if there's anyone out there that's got a Golf R, but there is just such a bad reputation with the people that drive them now. The very early cars with the lease deals on them meant they were really, really accessible, and everyone has modified them in the same way. They've painted all the badges black and tinted the windows and put silly little bits of plastic all over them, but they just drive them around flat out everywhere, and they are basically, like, in my opinion, they're like the new Astra VXR, the type of people that drive them. So with a Golf GTI, you do generally get a better class of person driving them. People are going to be in the comments now just saying, no, you're wrong. But the GTI is generally driven by people that are really, really into their cars and into the driving, especially with the manual box. In my other videos, you'll have seen my Porsche Cayman is actually a Tiptronic, so it's an automatic car. And I constantly get comments in there every day saying that, why have you got the automatic? Oh, you're not a proper driver, you shouldn't have the auto, it's less involving, blah, 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 blah. But with this, I've got the manual, so all of that is undone now, I'm assuming. People are going to be like, well, okay, fair enough, you've got one manual car. That's great. The Golf GTI is just one of those cars. It just doesn't get on your nerves. You can go to the shops in it, you find a bumpy road or road like this where it's just covered in mud and there's standing water everywhere, and you don't worry about it. You don't think you're going to come off the road. It's just so usable. One of my favourite things about this car is the little noise it makes. I often say in my other videos about how my Porsche sounds amazing and the flat six, there's no equal to that, and don't get me wrong, I don't like the way that a 4-pot car sounds. I don't like the synthetic noise that's pumped in through so many of them these days. But what this is fitted with, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I read somewhere that there's a pipe connecting the main block of the engine to, like, the firewall just beyond the dashboard. And what that does, it just echoes engine noise in. So it's artificially pumped in, but it's real noise. So that's quite nice, and it makes a farty little noise. Just accelerate up here and you'll hear it. And it's really good fun when you're mashing through the gears, and it just makes a great noise. But when you're just driving normally, it's silent, and that's what you want. I've never actually tested it to see if it actually sounds loud from the outside, so all that noise is probably just me, and I'm going along like, wait, it sounds brilliant, and then people are just thinking, sounds like a Hoover from the outside. But from the inside, it sounds great. It's just so well known, it's basically an icon. I would liken it to something like the Porsche 911 in how well known it is. Everyone knows what a Golf GTI is, and everyone knows what a Porsche 911 is, and that is high praise for a car like this. You don't get that from the Golf R. The Golf R is in its infancy, really, and a lot of people, especially if they're not into cars, will just be like, I don't know what that is. I know it's a Golf, but they won't know the significance of that. But the Golf GTI for me is a hot hatch for grown-ups, basically. It's totally classy, it fits in everywhere, it doesn't shout about it. You look at the design of it, it just looks right. When you walk back to it after parking in a car park, it's not aggressive, and a lot of people won't even notice it, but you just see that little red stripe along the front grille, and its little lip spoiler, and its little chunky wheels, and you just think, that looks great. And it really does. It's really, really nice. And the Mark 6, I think, looks fantastic. Like I said before, the Mark 5 was just so well received by journalists worldwide. And the Mark 6, in my opinion, was just forgotten. It's the forgotten Golf GTI. When you consider how good value these are now, I suggest that anyone looking to buy a hot hatch, or a Golf GTI for that matter, or a Golf, just have a go in a Golf GTI Mark 6 and you'll be surprised. God, it's confusing, these roadworks. I really don't understand half of these diversions and stuff. And they just crashed into a bollard. Like I said, these Mark 7.5s and Mark 8 Golf GTIs are going to be quicker, they're going to be better in every way, because that's what VW does. And so they get better every single year. Because it's a VW, they like to improve them, so they are a better car, that's just factual. But what I love about this particular Golf is just, it harks back to the good old days when hot hatches were just really, really basic. They were just fitted with large engines, big brakes and lowered suspension. And that's all you got, and that's all you needed. The Mark 7.5 and the Mark 8 are going to be a lot faster. They are a lot better car in every way. Everything this does, the Mark 8 will do it better. I can assure you of that. But for the money, the Mark 8 is nearly £40,000 and these are about 10,000, so is it 4 times the car? Well, I don't think so. Regular viewers of this channel will realise that I'm really into my cars that are just used car bargains, and I think this is one of them. No, it's not the cheapest, and you can go a lot quicker for a lot less money. You pick something like a VXR Astra or something, it's going to run rings around this. But that doesn't have the class that this does. If you wanted something for a track, I wouldn't suggest you buy one of these. It would need quite a lot of work to make it a track-focused car. You'd be better off spending your money on a Clio or a Megane R26 for that type of work. But for an everyday car, you really aren't going to do much better than this. As far as the interior is concerned, it's quite dull. It's quite old-fashioned now, and especially when you look at the Mark 8 GTI and the Mark 8 Golfs, wow, I mean, they're worlds away from this, worlds away. But everything in it is really well made, super well made. There's no rattles, no squeaks. This car is over 10 years old now and everything works. Nothing's worn away. Even some things that you'd have expected to have worn away, like all the rubber bits around some of the controls, they just haven't. So if you've liked seeing this car and you want to see some more videos on it, such as like a full review, maybe some of the costs that I've had running this car over 4 years, some of the, maybe a buyer's guide and things to look for, then just drop some comments in on what you want to see, if you want to see it all. I'm not sure how popular these cars are on YouTube. There wasn't much out there when I was looking for one, so I thought I'd put this video out here and see what it's like. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, if you can give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, for plenty more videos to come. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.